So the first question, is bhavanga linking broken up for the arahant? Is this why they are considered kappatita?
Yes, in a way I would say. The mind of an arahant, from what we know from the words of the Buddha and from commentaries and from teachers, is that there's no more craving, clinging, becoming, affecting the mind. So there's no more birth. Birth, the causes for birth have been removed. So there's no more sense of self, no more karma is being made. So the mind on every level, whether you're the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the bhavanga, the relinking conscious is not going to arise again, is it, for an arahant? Because they're not born again. They've reached the unborn because there's no more fuel to be born again. The fire has gone out, as it were, the fire that leads to rebirth. So they're peaceful. If they're still alive, they're still living in the world, but they're peaceful, don't make any more karma. And when they die, we call that parinibbana, and there's no more birth again for them. So it's considered the highest happiness, although it might sound like nothing. But we say emptiness or nothingness is the highest happiness. Because no more birth means no more aging, sickness and death, no more backaches, no more illness, no more trouble, all the problems people face, no more of that. If there's no birth, then suffering doesn't follow on. So it has to be the best.
Sadhu. Lompo. The next question, how did Ajahn come across Longpo Man's Abhidhamma notes?
Oh, they were printed into a book in Thailand. In Thailand they have many books. In Thai, obviously, I'm not sure that it's been done into English, but they were based on the Burmese system of Abhidhamma teaching. For a little while I was studying Abhidhamma, reading the book, so it was one of the books I came across. And the original was like a diary. Luang Por Man had wandered into the jungles of Burma, which is quite common for forest monks to do in those days. Wander into Laos, wander into Burma, and when he went into Burma he went and stayed with some well-practiced monks and he wanted to make a record of the teaching system of the Abhidhamma that they used. And in those days there's no photocopier or printer or digital, none of that. So he just wrote it down by hand. So it's like a handwritten diary, which later was printed into a book. I wouldn't know anything about who printed it and where you can get it, I'm afraid. The last time I saw a copy of that was 25 years ago, but we don't have one here, unfortunately. But if you're into that sort of thing, you can research it maybe and you find it.
Sadhu. Lompo. Next question. How do we overcome fear of death staying in remote places? It seems sometimes it can shoot up before mindfulness can catch it. At what level of attainment is fear of death and extreme Vedana, like cancer, for example, be able to be let go of? Is the process of the citta detaching from the sense basis between fourth and fifth jhana the same as what happens at death, except because there is still kamma, with the rupa it returns?
Well, going back to the first part of the question, obviously fear of death is based on the clinging to the five khandhas as me, mine, myself. and particularly the Rupa Khandha, this body, we want this body to stay strong, healthy, indefinitely. That would be our desire, I think, if we were honest. We don't want any pain, illness, death. We want to feel good. We want to look good. We want all these things which are all impossible, but still we have the desire. And everything else we can have with this body, the feelings, the pleasures we want with the body, the worldly dhammas, fame, fortune, power, all the different things we want based on this body. So then, wherever you are, whether you're in a very quiet, secluded place, or you're just in a house in a city or something, that fear of death is there all the time. It's in the back of your mind. Most of the time you don't notice it because it's not being stimulated. But as soon as something happens, whether you're, say you're involved in a near miss in your car, a collision or a near collision, the fear of death might come up very strongly. Or you're in the forest and you encounter a deadly snake or a tiger or something, the fear of death will come up. So I'm not sure you actually have to go anywhere special to investigate the fear of death. It can come along in so many different situations. And then, as you say, as we get older, illness comes along, so even just the ordinary illnesses that human beings everywhere can experience can bring a lot of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of how long it will take to recover, fear of pain, and then ultimately fear of death. Fear of loss, fear of separation. It's all based around this identification with body and mind as self, me, myself. Because if there was no attachment and clinging to the khandhas, then there'd be nothing to be afraid of, nothing to lose, as it were. So that's how an arahant would be, perhaps, is there's no more clinging, so there's no more fear. So there's no way around it. You've got to investigate fear, but what I think most people do, Sangha and laity, is they approach it in small steps, certainly at first. If there's nothing immediately threatening you or pressing you, you aren't ill or you're not meeting a tiger or whatever, well, you just go slowly and in small incremental steps. So like maybe when you meditate, in the beginning you might have fear of pain. You sit longer and you get some pain in your body. So you investigate that, how that fear is based on your attachment to the body and the feeling is unpleasant. You can investigate and learn a lot from painful feelings. And then, as I said, maybe more ordinary situations, if you're ever in a car and there's a near miss, or you get on a plane and you sort of feel, what if the plane crashes? So sometimes you just use a bit of imagination, but you're also reflecting on the impermanent nature of life, the fragility of life. And then, of course, as you said, sometimes serious illness comes to us in one way or another, and you really are suddenly very threatened. All of this is food for contemplation, isn't it? Our aim is to try and use the Dhamma to contemplate things, but you contemplate very ordinary, mundane, daily experiences first, and then you move on to the rarer or less common things like serious illness, life-threatening illness, or the fear of death from a tiger, or whatever it is, the more sort of unusual situations. You move on to that. And so my personal experience, I mean, you probably heard me say it before, the first time I went to camp in a forest that had a lot of wild animals, I couldn't sleep a wink the whole night, the first night, because the mind was just racing, because you could hear animals moving around. There's footprints. Where I put my camp, where I was sitting meditation, there were tiger footprints, elephant footprints, wild boar footprints. There's half a dozen different large animals, and snakes don't make footprints, but I just assumed they were around because people told me they were around. So I didn't sleep a wink the whole night. I was just sitting there what's that? What's that? But then I was investigating as well. Why do I feel nervous? Why do I feel anxious, worried? Why can't I sleep? Why doesn't the mind settle down? Oh, because there's this fear, and fear grabs you. Literally, it grabs the mind and the body experience a certain feeling, don't they? When you're afraid, if it's strong fear, kind of explodes out from your chest, so your heart pumps more. Your body feels, the sensations of that fear. There's maybe hormones and adrenaline as well. Maybe that's what keeps you awake at night when you are afraid. When you're meditating, your mind doesn't settle down. It's very hard to stay with a meditation object when you're afraid. That was all the sort of challenge. That was why I was there. So it's like, I've got to learn how to concentrate the mind even when fear is coming up. And as you establish more mindfulness over and over again, this is over many occasions, not just once, what you learn is that fear, like any other emotion, is impermanent. Suffering is not self, because it arises and ceases. It arises when it's triggered and it ceases after a while. And when you see that, fear is less overwhelming. It kind of shrinks back. You may still have, it's not like you abandon all fear in one go, but you may have a better attitude, a better view of it, understand it better what it is, and that helps you to face more fear, deal with more fear, and little by little your mind becomes bolder, more calm, more peaceful, even in fearful situations like serious illness or injury, or the threat from another person or an animal. It just depends where you're at in your practice, whether there's a lot of fear or a little fear, or for anagamis and arahants, no fear. These are grades or levels of letting go based on insight, ultimately seeing fear as a combination of thought, feeling, emotion, physical attachment, all this clinging to the five khandhas. When the five khandhas are seen as impermanent, suffering, not self, the mind doesn't want to cling. The more clearly that's seen, the less fear will come up. And it's quite possible to get to a point where even in a threatening situation, that you're aware that there's a threat, but no fear arises, because you also know that fear, to cling to fear as an emotion, as a feeling, is suffering. It doesn't make you stupid. You're still aware that there's something that could hurt you, or there's something threatening your life. But at the very same time, the emotion is seen as not self. So you're like, I'm not going with this emotion, I'm not reacting in this way. And it may not arise in the first place, or if it arises, you may let it go very quickly. There's enough clarity, mindfulness, insight, peace of mind, that the fear is weaker than that. So if the fear is weaker, it fades away quickly. So in the end, teachers I've nursed when they're sick, who have very good insight into fear, what's there to fear? There's just a human body which is impermanent, ugly, as we call it, super, unattractive. And it's going to get old, sick and die anyway, so it's just no point getting worried about it or making a big deal out of it, because that's what's going to happen. Like Lumpur Supha, for one, he said, when he was being, when the python was trying to swallow him, it didn't swallow him, luckily, it withdrew, but it was trying to swallow him, and he woke up with his feet in its mouth, and he said, well, you can have my body, because he wasn't attached to his body, but I've made a vow to practice for Nibbana, so if you take me with you, can you take me to Nibbana? And he said at that point the snake started to withdraw, stop swallowing him. So one who's seen Nibbana or had a glimpse of Nibbana, they'll know the body is not the seat of their happiness, it's not the basis for real happiness, anything of real value. They're not neglectful of their body, but they know it's not self, so then they're willing to let go of it. then there's no fear.
Sadhu Lompo. Next question. Dear Lompo, how to have more sense restraint? It's so hard to not get pulled into things in the world. Are there any reflections we can use to help the mind to turn away from the five sense world?
Lots. Reflections alone are probably not enough, though, isn't it? You also need some discipline, and that's where we practice precepts, 5 precepts, 8 precepts when you're ready. Practice Nekama Bharami, so reducing the amount of sense impingement by not eating in the evening, not engaging in entertainments, not dressing up, all this stuff. You simplify your life, that reduces a lot of sense input. But even if you keep 5 precepts, you have to be smart in your life and see where your weaknesses are. Maybe there are certain things you really get into that lead you into states of distraction or stimulate your mental defilements. So sometimes you need discipline, you need to make a plan, a strategy. How are you going to practice with something that stimulates your greed or your lust or your aversion as well? And you make rules for yourself, take on practices, you develop some personal discipline on the level of precepts, and then internally cultivating mindfulness, obviously, so meditating regularly will help. And like you say, reflections also help. So something that may have helped you in the past, you can use that and use it over and over again. So Ajahn Chah encouraged everyone to reflect on the uncertainty of sense pleasures, sense contact. It's not sure, you see something attractive, but then you may notice something unattractive in that same moment, and suddenly what was attractive becomes unattractive. It's not sure. Or even if the attraction is very powerful, how long will the pleasure and the causes for that pleasure last? Pleasure doesn't last that long. It can be 1 or 2 seconds, or it can be a few minutes, and then it's gone. It's not sure. So you bring up the reflection of impermanence. It's not sure. Even something that previously brought you pleasure, yesterday or before, today may not. Our mind is very fussy like that. And so one day you like something, the next day you don't. It's not sure. Things change. Maybe even things that you previously liked, you end up not liking, even hating. It could be a person, maybe someone's your friend, or you're attracted to that person for a while, and then suddenly, whatever it is, you find out more about them, or you get to know them, or something goes wrong. You see them as an enemy. Before they brought you pleasure, now they bring you pain. It's not sure. Life is like that. So sense restraint comes also from seeing impermanence of the sense contact, the feelings and emotions stimulated, and the very objects that stimulate all this, they're not sure, they change. So that's just one example of a reflection. You can maybe have other reflections that work for you in the past, maybe use them over and over again.
Sadhu Lompo. Next question. My sister is looking after my elderly mother. Every time when my mother sees her, she complains of her bodily aches and pains due to her aging body. My sister finds it hard to take it. Could you please give us some advice as to how my sister could cope? Thank you.
Well, every morning establish your heart in loving kindness, metta. When you're caring for someone, nursing someone, there'll be all kinds of challenges, difficulties, the physical ones. The person is in pain and having their own problems. You yourself, maybe sometimes you feel tired. Sometimes you feel better, sometimes worse. And then the person, sometimes they're easy to look after, sometimes they're not. They like you say, they complain, they say things, they do things. So establish your heart in loving kindness over and over again, starting in the beginning of the day or the beginning of the shift, so that you can keep that as a positive energy, a starting point, and just try and preserve it as best you can, or if you lose it, return to it as quickly as you can. With loving kindness, you also get patience, you get some positive energy. If it's a mother, well, you remind yourself of that relationship. Your mother brought you into the world, cared for you, so this is a chance to repay and give something back, care for her. Mothers generally are very patient and kind to their offspring, however difficult they are. We have to rise up when we're caring for our mothers in the same way, to look after them without complaining. And if mothers, sometimes their state of mind is so fragile or confused that they say all kinds of cruel things, untrue things, you have to remind yourself of that, reflect, it's not sure. When you lose your faculties, your mindfulness, your intelligence, it's possible to say stuff that is meaningless or cruel or untrue or confused. So don't take it too personally. Remind yourself of that. This is the symptoms of an old person who's maybe losing their mind or struggling with a lot of painful feelings. So remind yourself of that so you don't take it too personally, and you care for them while you've got your energy and while you're doing that duty until it's time to stop. Maybe there's someone else who can take over sometimes. So prepare your rest time as well. Get some rest time so that later you can go back and help them again. You can't just do it until you burn out. Sometimes you have to take a break and then you go back. So just try and manage it the best you can, but keep your mind in a wholesome, skillful state as much as you can. And it's a practice in itself, looking after an elderly, sick person. It's a very good thing to do, obviously, and you take it as a Dhamma practice in itself.